A sermon for Harvest 2023, based on Matthew 20, verses 1 to 16. The faithful come in convoys over the mountains and along the valleys, through the villages and small towns, past chapels and pubs, butchers' shops, rugby clubs, suppliers and farms. Old or young, town or country dweller, veteran or first-time visitor, each one of them arrives with the same pulsating sense of excitement and anticipation for what lies ahead. The opportunity to catch up with old friends and share memories of good times past, or just the feeling of being part of something that's bigger than all of us. These are the evocative words of Will Evans in his recent Farmers Weekly piece describing the Royal Welsh Show. He goes on to describe the eccentric but serious nature of the competitions and the processions of farm animals and their owners in their finest finery. If you've experienced of country shows, a smile may have already spread across your face. They are often wonderful gatherings, full of fun, competition and celebration. This year's shows in our diocese have been no exception. As agricultural chaplain, I'm hugely appreciative of those who enable, as Will Evans describes, the visitors to go home with laughter ringing in their ears. In challenging times, these occasions are highly valued. They allow us to put anxieties aside and enjoy the good things provided for everyone. As the show season draws to a close, the Church invites the faithful to more wonderful gatherings, our harvest festivals. The early weeks of this year's harvest were marred by unseasonably wet weather in the UK. The sorry sight of soggy crops in midsummer matched the general mood for some. But in mid-August, the sun shone, the combines rolled, and the prayerful amongst us dared to whisper the psalmist's words. The earth has yielded its harvest. God, our God, has blessed us. The earth of the Diocese of Chelmsford has indeed once again yielded its harvest. It's with relief and thanks that we'll gather to sing praises this Harvest Festival season. Today's Gospel reading invites us to a vineyard, an appropriate location for us. Vines have become popular in our region, led by the usually drier and warmer climate, coupled with the increasing need for diversification. Many of our farmers will empathise with the trials of the landowner in Matthew 20, as he visited the marketplace 5 times in the space of one day, attempting to hire workers. Many of our farm workers will sympathise with the complaints over the payment of one set day rate, regardless of hours worked. Many of our farm managers will sympathise with the manager who had to inform those who toiled from dawn to dusk that they were to receive the same wages as those who'd been hired for the last couple of hours. There are many themes familiar to our agricultural industry that we could draw from this gospel reading, but all would miss the point. When Jesus told this story, he wasn't pointing to viticulture, labour shortages, management structures or fair pay. It might be tempting for us to exclaim, "It's not fair," but Jesus points us to something much bigger. And the clue to where he's pointing lies in the biblical context of this passage. In Matthew 19, verse 16, Jesus is asked, "What good deed must I do to have eternal life?" In verse 25, the disciples ask Jesus, "Who can be saved?" Peter lists all that the disciples have given up to follow Jesus and asks how they will be rewarded. Peter hints at an expected hierarchy, as does the mother of James and John. Jesus answers their questions and assumptions with stories constructed to guide them to a fresh understanding of God's ways. Places in God's kingdom can't be earned. Eternal life can't be earned. These things are gifts. These are gifts that stem from God's goodness and generosity. Wealth, status, earnings are irrelevant. The last will be first, and the first will be last, says Jesus. In the vineyard illustration, Jesus demonstrates something astoundingly countercultural to his listeners. A place in God's kingdom can't be earned by hard toil. Instead, they could allow themselves to be lifted above the conflicting interests of this world to God's generous goodness, waiting for all. This continues to offer us a transformative message. It's a theme that sits at the heart of our harvest worship. Harvest Festival is all about giving thanks for the goodness of the harvest, the fruits of God's creation. How refreshing in a world where we're easily weighed down by anxiety, conflict and competition, to focus on the gratitude for the basics of life. This attitude of gratitude, this tuning into the goodness of God's creation, offers to lift the spirits of farmer, consumer and worshipper. By mid-September, the voices of analysis are projecting their verdicts on this year's harvest. Some farmers will have earned a fair wage, some won't. There'll be some satisfaction, some disappointment and some anxiety. Harvest festivals ensure that the agricultural world hears an additional voice. It's a voice that lifts us all above the minutiae of analysis to heartfelt thanks for bringing another harvest to fruition. After all, God's creation can only yield its goodness for humanity with human hands and minds. Today, all are invited to our county harvest festival in Chelmsford Cathedral. I pray that the faithful will come in convoys from every corner of the diocese, through the villages and towns, past churches and pubs, shops and farms. Old and young, town and country dweller, veteran or first-time worshipper, I pray that every one of them might arrive with a sense of anticipation for what lies ahead. I hope they'll catch up with old friends and share memories of good times past. And especially, I pray that each person will find themselves sensing God's love and goodness, something that's much, much bigger than all of us.